What is the creepiest thing that ever happened to you, which you still have no explanation for? Posted one day ago. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. A few months ago, I had a dream about an ICU patient at the hospital where I worked passing away, and when I mentioned it to a coworker the next morning, she told me that the patient actually did pass during the night, at the exact same time that I woke up from the dream. I remember it was 2:13 because I got up to pee after. This happened a long time ago. While I was at work, I suddenly felt my heart drop, felt very sad and like I was just told something horrible. I get home later that day and ask my then boyfriend if anything happened that day because this feeling was so strong and out of the blue. He goes white as a sheet and he's scared. Turns out, that same time, the man I thought I was going to marry was in the process of cheating on me. I don't believe in spirits, ESP, or anything like that, but I still can't effing explain it. The one time I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a shadowy figure standing next to my bed, moving with hands. When I reached my hand to it, it moved into the wall and dispersed. Once when we were alone, my elementary school's nurse, a really creepy old dude, asked me what would cause a body more harm, a steak knife or a butter knife. And when I guessed steak knife, he said, "One would think, but while a butter knife is blunter, it is also larger. Hand to God." When I was about 15, I used to babysit a lot for all the kids in my neighborhood, and one night I was down the street watching two of my favorite kids. I'd been there several times and was expecting their parents to be home at midnight. We baked cookies, played games upstairs, and I put them to bed. I was sitting on the sofa upstairs, outside their room, and playing games on my phone when I heard something downstairs. I perked up and listened. Sounded like something was in the kitchen. I dismissed it as being the cat, but as I thought that it wandered out of a room across from me, I listened closely again, and it sounded like papers rustling, drawers opening, and things generally being jostled around. I immediately started silently panicking. I hadn't been able to get a hold of the parents, even though it was around 1 a.m. by then. I typed out 911 on my phone so I could be ready to dial at any moment, and I started creeping downstairs like any classic idiot in a horror movie would do. The stairs were spiraled, so I wasn't able to see the bottom until the last few steps, and the kitchen was around the corner. On my way downstairs, the sounds were continuing, but as soon as I rounded the spiral to the final steps, it stopped. I knew exactly what the kitchen should look like since we had baked and I cleaned up, and I certainly had not left any lights on. From the bottom of the stairs, I could see that single lamp had been turned on in the living room, and at that point, I was sure someone was there. I don't know what my plan was, but I whipped around the corner to look in the kitchen, and nothing. Nothing was out of place. The sounds had stopped, doors were locked, windows closed. Everything, aside from the lamp, was in order. Once I'd made sure of this, I sprinted back upstairs and sat there hugging my knees, listening for anything suspicious. The parents got home at about 2 a.m., and I ran downstairs, got paid, and sprinted down the street to my house. I really have no answers as to how this happened, but I can still picture it clear as day. I was walking home from my monthly hike. I live in very rural Canada, where there are lots of forests, so I knew the area very well. I was running really late that day, so it was starting to get dark. I started walking a bit faster so I could get home before nightfall. Only a few hundred meters from my house, I started hearing cracking branches and leaves rustling all around me. I started walking a bit faster, which turned into a sprint. Suddenly, only about 100 meters from my house, a large man walked out from the bushes right in front of me. I stopped in my tracks. We sat there for a moment in silence before it was broken by him saying, "Are you?" my first and last name. I stepped back a little. "Yes?" He then read out the date, January 14th, 2022, and then walked back off into the woods. I ran back to my house and locked the doors. That was almost 2 years ago, and I still think about it to this day. The date is coming up very soon, and I'm terrified of what he might have been prophesizing. As a kid, my brother, 2 sisters, and I lived in a really run-down house on a farm. We didn't have much to do, but we'd played with an old tape deck that we had, recording ourselves saying stupid things. We popped in a new cassette and recorded. What played back wasn't us. It was a low-pitched, distorted, "Help me." Never touched it again. I walked into the bathroom of this place I was renting and went directly to the sink. The very second I stopped in front of it, I was dumbfounded to find myself holding a large bowl-shaped glass cover that had been on the ceiling light. I certainly wasn't looking up when I walked in, and there was no warning sound. How the heck did I catch it when I didn't know it was falling? One night I took an Uber to get home. The driver asked me if I'd seen the license plate and his picture before going into the car. He told me most people don't do it, and how would I be sure if he was the Uber driver and not another person if I didn't do it? All this in a really creepy way. He kept talking about this stuff and then took a really weird turn and started going north when he should have gone west. I had my first panic attack that night. I once went to bed in my bed and woke up in my girlfriend's, at the time, bed. I was woken up by her shock that I was there. I didn't have a key. There were no open windows. She doesn't remember me arriving at the house. We were just left confused. No drugs or alcohol were involved either. I was driving down to my parents' house. They have a really long driveway, and a man walked right in front of my car carrying a guitar case. I just hit the brakes and saw that he was running across the field behind my parents' house. They live in a rural area. To this day, I have no idea who that guy was or what he was doing. Both of these are Halloween stories. The first one was when me, my old best friend, and my parents were all out trick-or-treating. Me and my friend went up to a really dim house, but it had some form of light that made us think we should try it anyways. Don't remember what, but anyways, me and her walked up to the house and knocked. A tall, lanky, bald man opened it pretty quickly, looked to be around 30. I remember he looked at my parents, both of them on the sidewalk. I had an oddly disappointed look on his face, but he gave us compliments on our costumes and handed us each 2 peppermints, the hard circle with the white and red stripes. When we went back to my parents, we both didn't put the peppermints in our bag. Instead, our dad took them and threw them away. The man gave me the creeps. Just something about him felt off, like he was up to no good. The second one was when I was with my mom in a nearby town where I live. We were heading to the darker part of town, and it was about time we should head back, but I wanted to go a little farther because I saw 2 houses still lit up. We got to that part where the sidewalk ended, and you had to cross the road to get to the other side onto another sidewalk, but a white old car slowly came to a stop where they should turn, but they didn't. It just stayed there. We both stopped and got scared. We didn't say anything, but we both had the same thought, that the person was waiting for us to go past it to kidnap us. But we don't really know why they did stop. Eventually, they had to go because another car drove up behind it and forced it to turn, and the other car left as well. Who knows? Maybe both could have been kidnapping attempts. Moved into a new house 7 months ago, and 2 months ago, I walk into the master room, 2nd floor, and the manhole door is open. It's the kind that you push up and move to the side to access the roof crawl space. It was turned and shifted about halfway open. I asked my sister's husband to come over and check the roof for me, which he did. Nothing. Still creeped out by this every time I hear a noise in the house when it's quiet. I live in a standalone house, 2 stories, just me and 2 kids right now. It would make no sense for someone to be up there, but tell that to my imagination at 2 a.m. About 8 years ago, I was taking a nap on my sofa and got woken up by a loud female scream that sounded like it came from the same room I was in. There was nobody there, but when I looked in the kitchen, I saw the fire blanket that's meant to be attached to the wall was on the floor, like right in the middle of the floor. I was so shook that I went next door to ask if they heard anything. They didn't. I still don't know how to explain what happened, and what's more creepy is the fact that the scream was so vivid and clear, and I've never experienced being woken up this way. Also, how did the fire blanket loosen itself from the plastic box on the wall? So strange. When I was like in kindergarten, I was staying up one night, and it was about 6:30 when I heard a loud screech, and it sounded like scratching on my door, and since I'm white, I went to go check. Nothing there, so I'm puzzled. Laying down, when I looked to my right, it was a humanoid creature hanging from the top of my ceiling, in my loft, which was like 3 rooms away from my room. The next day, I got home from school and went to see what made that screeching and scratching noise. I still don't know to this day. Well, it wasn't a period. I remember taking my highway exit and then pulling into my driveway. That's a journey of about 10 miles with other stops, turns, and lights. I actually pride myself on having a good memory, and even when I've been super drunk, I can basically recall everything. It's just that particular night I was sober, albeit tired, and have no recollection of that 20 or so minutes of my life, and it still freaks me out to this day. So weird shit started happening in my house. My door was closing and opening, full handle turn and latch, and I asked my sister about it, and her ceiling fan just turned on, and she had a cup with a straw in it that just started spinning around really fast randomly at night. Then I did a little research and found the town, atlases, and then the chunk of land that our house is on, and of all the past owners, only one has died in the house in the 1700s, and reports say that it was a mysterious death, but ever since, I kind of discovered him. Unexplainable shit has just been happening, and I feel legit crazy, but it feels crazy. Like there are lamps in my room that when they move sound like wind chimes, but in a very specific way, and I will hear it in the basement 3 floors down, and I see a shadowy male figure out of the corner of my eye, and it really freaks me out, but I don't get bad vibes from it, so I don't know. This happened way back when I was still working in a hospital during night shift. I received a call for blood extraction around 3 a.m. at the pneumo ward, where on the 7th floor, patho is on the ground. I accepted it, prepared, and brought my blood collection materials and went to the lobby to ride the lift. The creepy part is when the lift keeps on opening despite pressing the close button from the inside, and no one is in the lobby to press the open button outside. This went on 3 times before hopping out. Upon exiting the lift, that's when the doors ultimately closed. I don't remember if it went up. I pressed the 7th floor button when I was inside while waiting for the doors to close, or down, but I didn't dare ride a lift again when alone. I'm not lying. I've been having lots of dreams, like lucid ones, and they've been repeating. The scary part is they all have a scary part of it where it's like there's a field of grass turning to a building, but in my dreams it's a lava portal with guys in robes and telling me to go through, and I've had that dream 8 to 6 times. But the scariest part is all of those lucid dreams are connected together, like they're in the same world, and they feel so real, and they all have a scary side to them, and I even feel things in it, but to this day, I don't know why I get in total 18 of these dreams that connect. I used to live in an apartment building when I was younger, and I remember one day my mother finding tiny bite marks in her sack of potatoes she kept stored underneath the kitchen sink, since there was extra storage in there. She suspected it to be a rat that somehow got its way into our complex, although no one knew how it got there. We lived on the top floor of a 3-story apartment, and the only way in or out was through the front and back doors, or, the more likely story, there was a hole somewhere that allowed the rat to access to our section of the building. My parents did the usual routine of setting up mousetraps and hoping for the best. One night, we heard one of the traps go off and checked the next morning to discover nothing in it minus the untouched cheese. After a couple more nights, I started hearing rustling going on underneath my bed due to several small cardboard boxes filled with toys and games being there, and it scared the shit out of me at the time. The rustling continued for the next couple of nights after that, since no one wanted to attempt opening said boxes out of fear of being attacked or bitten. We just kept waiting for it to leave or go towards the traps set up. One fateful night, I heard the rustling once again, but this time the rat exited one of the boxes and scurried outside of my room and into the kitchen. My door was open that week to ensure the rat escapes and wanders into the kitchen, which was connected to my room by a small corridor, as we lived in an apartment with not much space. Here's the creepy part. The next day, we checked to see where the rat had gone to, but couldn't find it anywhere. The traps were still bare, with the cheese still untouched, and when we finally got to opening the boxes, we found nothing. No rats, no droppings, nothing. The reason why it's creepy is that it made no sense at the time. I remember hearing the rat scurrying along quickly across the floor for a couple of seconds before stopping, which, according to the layout of the apartment, meant that it must have escaped behind the fridge, since that's the first thing you encounter when you enter the kitchen through the small corridor. It's possible that it got stuck behind there and died. That's what I concluded, until several years later, when my family decided to move out, that we finally checked the back of the fridge, while we were cleaning out the whole place in general, and found nothing except for dust bunnies. To this day, no one knows whatever happened to that mysterious ghost rat that appeared and disappeared out of nowhere. A couple of years ago, my neighbor was a man. He was very old, so he couldn't really do things that others can do. So me and my friend helped him. We took some walks with him and played chess with him, but he was always kind of angry. He never talked that much, Every day at like 9:30, I think we met right outside his house to take a walk, but that day he didn't come out. So I waited 15 minutes and nothing happens. So I knock on his door. Nothing. Then I wait 5 minutes and then I walk in and I find him laying on his bed. He was dead. Then a couple of months later, a family moves in. They had one child. I think she was 3 at the time. Then a couple months passed by and the mom came knocking on my door. Then before I even said hello, she just said, "Did an angry old man live here before we moved in?" It was kind of weird since no one had told them that he died in there. So I looked at her kind of shocked and said, "Yes, how did you know that?" She said, I didn't really understand her, but then she said, "Did he die there? And if he did, which room?" Then I showed her where he died and she looked so scared and kind of sad. I asked what was wrong and she said, "My daughter, she's about 3.5 years old and she's been coming into my room since we moved in and she didn't do that in our old house." And she said that there was an old man standing in the corner of the room, that one he died in, and that he looked very mad and that he was staring at her. This still kind of gives me the creeps when I think about it. Had sleep paralysis, then waking up to a tall shadow standing in my doorway. I was terrified and closed my eyes until I fell asleep again, then woke up again the second time. The shadowy figure is still there on the same position that I saw him the first time. After that, I forced myself to sleep again and finally woke up to feel my heart is racing. Felt really terrified since I was all alone with my dogs that afternoon.